Welcome to this screencast from Homer to Aeschylus, the purpose of which is to explain some cultural and historical background leading up from the time of Homer, the last work we read, up into the 5th century with Aeschylus, the first of the tragedians. Where we left off in the 8th century, 725 being the later date for the Odyssey, there was a lot of Oriental influence in the Greek world, that is to say, influence from the East, places like Turkey, Asia Minor. We see this in their forms of government. The Greeks were ruled by kings, as we saw in Homer, or oligarchies, small groups of wealthy, influential citizens who ran the individual cities. They had adopted hoplite warfare, as you see in the picture at the right, something used by earlier cultures, the Assyrians for one, in which heavily armed, close ranks of soldiers fight side by side. Their art was heavily influenced by the East. You can see here some pictures of some 6th century statuary, the one on the left being called a kouros, a boy. You can see that the body proportions are pretty close, but see how stiff the limbs appear, right? The feet are placed awkwardly, the hands at the side, the archaic smile. The picture in the middle is of a kore, just means a girl. You can see that this was a similar statue, although clothed with a similar awkward positioning of the limbs and the body. Right? To the right, you see some Corinthian pottery in the Orientalizing style, where you can see a sphinx and some other mythological creatures with all sorts of combinations of humans and animals, much the way we saw in the gods and the creatures in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Again, if you picture the statues, imagine Egyptian statuary where the body is very stiff and not lifelike in movement. These are parts of the world that at this time are in a state of high culture. The Greeks are in a state of low culture, and they are looking outside to the east for influences, for models to copy. Well, as we move out of the 7th century into the 6th century, though, there's a lot of governmental reform in the Greek world, and most of this is not particularly important for your tests, but to picture what's going on, in the 625 and forward, we have the rise of tyrannies. Largely, these were supported by the people. The people had been tired of being ruled by kings or by oligarchs, so they installed individual strongmen to rule in their favor. And these worked well for some time, although after a while, of course, tyrants become tyrannical and the people tried to get rid of them. Well, in 594 in Athens, the famous leader Solon instituted a bunch of economic and constitutional reforms in Athens that would lay the foundation for democracy. First off, he canceled all debts. The Athenian economy had gone in the tank. Many people had been sold off into slavery to cover their debts. They'd been sold abroad, and Solon, to kick off his big turnaround, canceled all debts. He announced to all banks countrywide, Title Max, Citibank, Wells Fargo, that everyone's balance was zero. He went abroad, bought back Athenians that had been sold into slavery to foreign countries, brought them back to the city, and gave them a new start. He established 4 census classes, which were the basis of rights for citizens and the offices one could hold, which doesn't seem fair. The census classes were based on wealth, so the wealthiest citizens were the only ones who could hold the highest offices. This was a factor, though, of the fact that there was no bureaucracy whereby government could provide services. So if you ran to be the archon who oversaw road construction, and there was a road that had to be built, you would have to pay for it out of your own pocket. So only the wealthiest citizens could afford to pay for large work projects out of pocket. The one equalizer was, however, that all citizens could vote in the General Assembly. So now this has to be qualified. Only adult male citizens with property could vote in the assembly. Not an ideal democracy, but You have to crawl before you can walk, and this is democracy at the crawling stage. Solon went on to standardize weights and measures, coinage, to encourage trade. So if you bought a bushel of wheat from Athens, you knew how much wheat was in there. If you got a gold coin from Athens, you knew how much it was worth because you knew how much gold was in there. He encouraged cash crops like olives for export. He got the Athenian economy up and running and got the citizens in a state of prosperity. As prosperous as they were, apparently it wasn't good enough for the lower classes, and in 561, Pisistratus was installed as a tyrant in Athens. So you had one person ruling in favor of the common people, and this went on for a generation. And after Pisistratus' death, his son took over and went the way of the tyrants. In 510, there was a revolution. Harmonius and Aristogeiton are the famous tyrannicides who stage a coup against Pisistratus, and or not him, but his family rather, and they bring down the family eventually. There's an attempted assassination. They themselves are killed and tortured, but the people rise up, and in 510 kick out the tyrants, and by 508 the revolution is complete, and under someone called Cleisthenes, the radical democracy is established in Athens. The citizens are organized by local demes. These are similar to our precincts. There were 139 of them, and groups of demes were represented equally in the council and in the offices. The demes included parts of the city that were wealthier, parts that were poorer. So you had people from different economic groups all shoved into one deme, having to work together to get political clout for their area. The important takeaway from this slide is that the Greek cultural ideals take shape as we move into the 5th century. There's a complete push to the middle, away from the poor and away from the rich. In the old days, it was the rich, the oligarchs, the kings, who decided what was going to happen and oppressed the common people. Then the common people put in tyrants who ruled in their favor for a short time and then ceased to do so. As they move out of the 6th century into the 5th, there's the push to the middle class to keep the rich from oppressing the poor, to keep the rich from falling off the end, and to keep democratic society moving forward. Well, you can see at this time, as we move into the 5th century, you get artistic developments. If you went to a museum and wanted to see a Greek pot, you probably expect to see one like the two on the left. The black figure vase with mythological scenes on the top left, and then to the bottom left you see the red figure vase. Again, the sorts of mythological scenes, the sorts of characters you expect on a Greek vase. Likewise in statuary, you can see that on the right you have lifelike movement in the statues now. The body proportions are correct, and the Greeks figured out how to represent movement in the body, so that there's a natural lean, a natural flow, a much more lifelike structure. So Greek government comes into what we expect it to be. Greek art comes to be what is expected. This is what we think of as the Greek Golden Age. Well, elsewhere in the world, a new empire is up and coming. The Persian Empire starts in